So, hey, ladies and gentlemen, can we get your attention here real quick? Ladies and gentlemen.
Oh no.
Hey, I just want to welcome everyone. My name's Delegate Matt Morgan. I represent North St. Mary's in the Maryland General Assembly. And I want to wish you all a Merry Christmas to start off with. So, I want to thank you all for coming out. We're here until 6, yes. Correct? So if you have friends or in the area, you want to text them to come on by, come on by. So how we got to this point was there was a lease that was submitted to DNR, and then I think there was just a lot of miscommunications about what this lease entailed and what it exactly was. So working with my office, Senator Bailey's office, the Civic Association here in Golden Beach contacted us and kind of like was wondering what was going on. And I know a lot of people in this community have kind of been misled on other projects like the water tower out here and stuff. So we took this really, really seriously. First of all, DNR did a very good job notifying the property owners that are affected by this lease. But one of the problems you have in Golden Beach is, you have interior lots. And Golden Beach is a huge waterfront community, probably the largest in the county. So everyone has a vested interest of what's going on in the water, especially in the community piers, but you wouldn't live in a waterfront community if you didn't care about the Patuxent River. So it immediately had some people concerned how some people got letters and some people didn't. So DNR was gracious enough to put on this little public information center. Carl Rocher from DNR here is going to more than happy to answer some of your questions. Senator, you want to say a few words?
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Carl, for coming. Thank you all for coming and attending this week, right before we go into the Christmas holiday. Really do appreciate it, right? We are obviously oysters, and being in the Senate, we have a little bit of oyster fatigue, right? Because in the last few years, there's been a tremendous amount of bills that have come forward about oysters. And everybody thinks that they know the best way to manage oysters. We did a lot of work in the Senate last year. One thing I will tell you is oysters do clean in Chesapeake Bay. And we need to have oysters out there, right? We need viable oyster bars, right? That is what made our bay. That's what we're going to work to continue to have, right? But we have to have a balance of the users, the watermen, the aquaculture, and everything that helps us maintain our bay, right, and the quality that we want it to be. So it's very thankful that DNR is willing to come down and do this. There has been some controversy in the last few years about leases, right? The entire lease, the way leases was done, was changed at around 2009. The same time that happened, for property owners, your property values, the amount of tax that you paid went up for the majority of waterfront owners by 200%, right? And the state took away some of what there had existed in the ability for a property owner to have the shoreline leases or bottom leases away from them. They had the first right to have them, right? So that changed. So there are some people that lost that are a little bit, upset in different areas of the county. There was also an issue with column leases, right? And oysters that are above the bottom that impede some boating traffic, the ability for people to paddleboard, use some other issues. But that, if we could make room so that everybody could get in, that would be great. So with that, and with all these issues, it's rather complicated. And sometimes when the legislature does things, there are some unintended consequences that we have to go back and fix. So we're very interested to hear from each and every one of you. But what we want to do tonight is have Carl talk to you and explain to you the particulars of this lease. That this lease is just a bottom lease. right? This lease is only what's going to occur on the bottom of the Patuxent River. It's not going to be protruding above. And I've got to tell you, right, as some of you know, good, bad, or indifferent, I was a natural resource police officer for 30 years out there, right? That land was leased prior to this, right, for bottom leases. And it didn't affect what Golden Beach did out there, right? And that's what we're here to make sure that DNR is going to tell us, right, that what they're doing out there is going to help the Patuxent River. It's going to in turn help the Chesapeake Bay, but it's not going to take away your rights, right? And we're going to sort of hold you to that, Carl.
Sure. Go ahead, Carl. You want to just talk a little bit about what the current application is?
Sure.
Maybe with some past precedents, and then some rumor control.
Sure, glad to do it. First of all, I'd just like to say it's really nice to be down in Southern Maryland. It's been a while. I'm out of the Annapolis office, and unfortunately, behind my desk a lot. I don't get as much opportunity to get out in the field as I used to when I was working hands-on with leaseholders and other folks that had aquaculture operations. So thanks for this opportunity. It's good to be here. And thank you, Delegate Morgan, Senator Bailey, for your intro and for being here tonight. And above all else, thank you folks for coming in. This makes our process that much more transparent, and we'd like to get factual information out to folks that have concerns over these projects so we can dispel misperceptions and those types of things. And then finally, just want to thank, before I get started, talk a little bit about the lease, thank the applicants for being here. Josh and Holly are here tonight, over here. If you want to talk to them about what they have proposed, please do so before you leave. And then we also have Bill Pfeiffer, who has an existing lease just north of this lease, CH 513, and is interested in looking at some additional bottom into Patuxent to try and make it more productive, get more oysters out there. And then finally, my staff is here, Becky Thur, Alyssa Kranska, and Kelly Dennis over at the table there. We're all here to answer your questions. So before you leave, if you want to talk about the DNR's process or a little bit more about this lease, don't hesitate to come up and ask us some questions. So thanks again. Just to kind of set the record straight, the Bucklers have applied for a submerged land lease. The only thing you can do on a submerged land lease is put shell and young oysters on the bottom, as Senator Bailey said, raise those oysters up, and then come in and harvest those oysters off there. You cannot use containers on a submerged land lease. It's not legal to do that. You have to mark 4 corners of your lease, and there's a slide up here or a poster that shows the type of markers that the Bucklers have chosen to mark, and they are at this point floating jugs, so there would be a weight on the bottom with a line, a chain and a line that attaches that to the bottom so it stays on position. That's it. If an individual wanted to try and get a permit for a water column lease where you'll be putting some sort of container for the oysters in the water, cages on bottom or floats on the surface, you can't convert a submerged land lease to a water column lease. You have to go back through the entire process again and reapply. That information will be disseminated, direct notification to landowners, a post on our website, public process again through a public notice and hearing and all that. And I can tell you that I've conferred with the Corps on this project, and just to try and help ease some of the concerns that we've heard about, we would not approve a water column lease this close to existing docks because that would in fact limit your ability to ingress or access your dock. So that's not going to happen this close to your dock. So please feel a little bit more comfortable about this. I don't know what happened over the past few months, but evidently there's some information that went out that the applicants were going to start off as a submerged land lease and then convert it to a water column lease. And I can absolutely understand your concerns. If I was a property owner near the lease, I would have the same concerns. But that's not the case. Question?
Well, I own the lot, the furthest goes northwest, it's straight off of my dock. And in the last meeting, before we got the letter, after we got the letter from, I believe it was Rebecca Thor in your office.
Yes.
I talked to you several times, and you told me that if the bottom did not support the shells on the bottom and the spats, then they could reapply. You know, it's all well and good. I have no problem with oyster there. I've got a 27-foot cruiser. It draws quite a bit. It's still not going to hit the bottom. But the problem is, if it didn't pass and they reapplied and got permitted to put in the cage system, that's when we all have a problem. So you just said that it's not gonna happen.
Correct.
It's not,
So
he
it
said
would,
it wasn't going to happen, he said they would have to
They
reapply.
can reapply, that's what you told me. It would not be approved.
would not be approved given the current location and proximity to these docks.
That's all then, when they have the fireworks, all those folks are coming back to Benson's Pier.
So-
Because the last thing they want to do is run through us.
So I can, and I understand that completely, and it would not be approved in the current position. What I can tell you is we have had watercom leases applied for where an individual applied to put cages on bottom. And to use an example, we had a property where there was one dock or one pier extending from a property, and there were multiple owners along the shoreline. Not as many owners as there are here. What we did is we contacted the other owners that didn't have a dock. They were not opposed to the project. And where the dock was, we made the leaseholder move away from the dock so there was unimpeded access to the dock. We were very cognizant that you cannot restrict the public's ability to access the property.
So it's not just the property, it's flow into the creek that is at issue as well.
So in addition to properties, we look at best routes, north and south and east and west, and we try to avoid a situation where an individual would apply for a lease where you wanted to put gear in the water and they would occupy the deepest water route in and out of a cove or a creek or somewhere else, and we avoid those areas because then you are restricting the ability of an individual to navigate either north, south, east, west through an area. So that's taken into consideration.
Are there specific measurements that they have to go by? Like, I don't know how much water space there is from one point on the other side, on the Benedict side, to our beach. What are the measurements and what's the maximum, what's the minimum?
So there's no minimum vertical clearance.
Access into the inflow into the creek. How much area has to be available
To navigate through?
Yeah.
By law,
Yeah, so
but
you
that's not best
can't,
practice.
you can't be within 50 feet of a dock or a
dock,
property.
I
Let,
understand.
let me finish for a second. You can't be within 150 feet of a federal navigation channel or a channel that is locally maintained where there is access. And in an area, as I stated before, where you would reduce that vertical or the clearance over that gear, we would look at what the depth is in the area that an individual is trying to navigate in and assure that that depth would not be limited by placement of that gear.
Anybody know the measurement and how much? I mean, you're saying 150 feet, they could.
From a dredged channel. Like so, you can't get within 150 feet because we want clearance. So if the channel has to be dredged, the equipment can get in there and continue to dredge, and there's a little bit of room on both sides to do that.
How come this meeting was held when there's a lot of people that's hanging up on board?
Hold on real quick.
Hold
on. Ladies and gentlemen, hold on real quick. We can't hear the question. Go ahead, sir. Hold on. There's too much chatter in here. We couldn't hear the question. Go ahead, sir. We couldn't hear your question. Go ahead.
Well, I said, how come the meeting was held at 4 o'clock? Half the people down here are not even on 4 o'clock.
Okay, I can address that. We've asked for the meeting to be held later. We put state employees on more of an overtime, so it was the only way they could have really accommodated that inside DNR. They pushed it back to 6, so that was the best we could do. So sorry.